All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and man, a lot to talk about today. Apparently, according to Mike Jones from The Athletic, the Washington Commanders are 5th in offensive coordinator openings out of 13 NFL teams. That's actually really good and way better than I thought it would be. But I also want to take the time to see what he said about the situation, about the teams ahead of us in the list and why they're more attractive in his opinion, and also why we could be the most and the least, the best and the worst offensive coordinator position opening out of the entire NFL. It can go both ways depending on which way you look at it. Also, Thomas Brown is officially interviewing today for the offensive coordinator opening. I hope he leaves with the job offer. I hope he leaves with pen on paper. I hope we seal that deal right now. He's my favorite candidate remaining. Of course, I like Shane Steichen from the Eagles a lot. I was really interested in Darrell Bevell from the Miami Dolphins, and Thomas Brown is easily my favorite candidate remaining. And I want to talk about that whole situation for a little bit, and I also want to update y'all on every coach that we've officially interviewed so far. Has been 5 of them, with Thomas Brown making the 5th today. But before we dive into everything, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately, and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you pull up every Sunday for the call-in show, and make sure you're on the lookout for all of the content I'm coming out with. Like I said, I have so many ideas and so much stuff I got to get through that I really need to be making like 2-3 videos a day, and eventually I will get to these film sessions for a lot of the draftable players like Christian Gonzalez, Joey Porter, quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson, maybe even Will Levis and stuff like that. But those are going to be for channel members only, so make sure y'all stay tuned for that. All of the free agency stuff, all of the draft stuff, any news as far as new ownership, stadium news, all of that type of stuff. So make sure y'all stay tuned, man. I'm gonna keep y'all updated with everything. Y'all saw I posted the Sam Howell workout video from this off season just a couple of days ago, so I'm gonna keep y'all updated on that as well, in the pain saga that's going on. So without further ado, let's get it. All right, so like I said, Mike Jones of The Athletic ranked the 13 offensive coordinator openings in the NFL. He said, with the NFL hiring cycle in full swing, 5 teams have launched searches for their next head coach. Meanwhile, 8 teams have retained their head coaches but are making changes for offensive coordinator. The Baltimore Ravens, Los Angeles Chargers, Los Angeles Rams, New England Patriots, New York Jets, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tennessee Titans, and Washington Commanders have all begun interviewing candidates for their openings. That number will obviously increase once the Denver Broncos, Arizona Cardinals, Carolina Panthers, Houston Texans, and Indianapolis Colts fill their head coach openings. So once those teams figure out who their head coach is going to be, then those will officially be 5 more offensive coordinator openings on top of the 8 that are already open and people are interviewing for them like us. And it's possible some playoff teams could make some changes in this department as well, which is something that does happen. Even a team that's made it this far into the conference championships, nobody's safe, man. They may need an offensive coordinator after this season as well. And don't be surprised if one of the top offensive coordinator targets, if they have some type of clue that one of the offensive coordinators that's still coaching in the playoffs currently, that if they end up getting fired, they may want that job, because that has to be a very highly appealing job. Because if you're this far into the playoffs at this point, either the quarterback is good or the team is really good, or both. And why would you not want to be an offensive coordinator in a situation like that? He went on to say, one of the highest profile assistant positions in the league, offensive coordinator often serves as a springboard for head coaching careers because the job requires a hand-on approach with the quarterback and is often the driving force behind offensive production in this pass-heavy league. I want to keep emphasizing pass-heavy league for those of y'all that just for some reason don't get it yet. All offensive coordinator positions are not created equal, however. Resources, support, and creative freedoms vary, which means the chances for success also vary. That's one thing I'm worried about with Ron Rivera, because they say they want to do this run-heavy offense. What good offensive coordinator are you going to be able to bring in if you're telling them immediately in the interview process how they need to dictate their offense? And then also, what offensive coordinator wants to come into a situation where you want to run the ball twice and pass it once? again, I believe that was a complete lie, mostly because of the fact that they drafted Jahan Dotson in the first, paid Terry McLaurin all of that money, and went through all that they went through to get Curtis Samuel a couple of years ago. That was just a flat out lie. Don't know why they said that out loud. I understand having a balanced offense, but 2-to-1 run pass is insane. Chris Cooley said it perfectly earlier today. We have to have the only head coach and front office in the league that has a great wide receiver trio and decides they want to be a run-heavy offense. I genuinely don't understand drafting Dotson last year if they want to run the ball 35 plus times. I truly believe it's due to them failing to find an even serviceable QB. So instead of continuing to try and find one, they decided to just change their whole plan on offense, which is pretty sad in my opinion. And I completely agree. If they're serious about that, and they were clearly serious about that this past season, once Carson Wentz didn't look like the guy, they already knew who Taylor Heineke was. They were like, we're just going to do this run-heavy offense because we don't have the franchise quarterback that can run another type of offense, a pass-heavy offense. But if they go into this next season with that same mentality, that's just pure laziness, and they need to be fined for being neglectful towards the QB position. That's just pure laziness. You've already just decided that you cannot find a great enough QB to be able to run a pass-heavy offense like you need to succeed at the NFL level. And you're just like, well, we don't feel like doing that part of the job, so we'll just do a run-heavy offense, and if it doesn't work, well, at least we tried. And then here's his order. He has number 1, the Chargers, obviously, mostly because of Justin Herbert, but then he also talks about how they have really talented receivers in Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and a gifted running back in Austin Eckler. With those building blocks already in place, the opportunity for success seems high. And like I've already said in another video talking about the Chargers offensive coordinator opening position and all of that type of stuff, that, I mean, if you get Justin Herbert to just win one playoff game, you've automatically done more than the previous guy, and everybody's going to look at you like a genius. Even if you're not a genius, if Justin Herbert just finds a way to actually finish a game and actually just end up winning a playoff game, and it can be completely on him, and it's like the offensive coordinator wasn't even better than the last one. But if Justin Herbert just gets his stuff together in the second half of games, the offensive coordinator is going to be able to take credit for that even if he doesn't deserve it. So that's a great job to go into. All you got to do is get one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL to win one playoff game with all of this talent around him. I feel like that's not that difficult. Number 2, the Rams. With Sean McVay returning, continuity is ensured, and the coordinator gets to work with Matthew Stafford, the second best quarterback in this field, and Cooper Kupp and other talented pieces. Now, I may not exactly agree with the Matthew Stafford thing, but I love to hear that as a Georgia Bulldog fan. More than anything, though, this is a chance to work with one of the brightest young head coaches in the league and get on that head coaching track, like my boy Thomas Brown, who I hope we do not let leave Commanders facilities today without that contract done, and he's the next defensive coordinator. You can let him be the tight ends coach as well if he wants to be. You can let him be the passing game coordinator. Let him do as many jobs as he wants to be. Let him control the running backs as well, because he has a lot of history with that too. Mike Jones went on to say, this position has served as a springboard for previous top offensive assistants Matt LaFleur, Zach Taylor, and Kevin O'Connell. The only drawback to some is that McVay serves as his own play caller. However, that hasn't prevented teams from swiping his offensive coordinators in hopes of duplicating McVay's success. So if you're a young offensive mind with head coaching aspirations, you take this opportunity understanding that getting the McVay cologne on you outweighs the chance to call plays. And that's so true. It's so sad, but so true. But I'm not one of those people that's solely dependent on the fact that Thomas Brown is from the Sean McVay coaching tree. There's other attributes as well that points to why I feel like he needs to be our next defensive coordinator. He's my favorite option. Then you also have the Buccaneers. The Bucs appear headed for a rebooted quarterback with Tom Brady seemingly moving on, but attractive elements remain, including wideouts Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and running back Rachaad White. Quality veteran offensive linemen return, although they didn't perform well this season. Maybe another offensive coordinator can get more out of them while instilling more balance. Even though I feel like Byron Leftwich ended up being like a scapegoat, and I felt like Tom Brady was just plain old terrible this year, especially in that Cowboys playoff game. So I feel like the next offensive coordinator is going to come into a better team without Tom Brady on it, potentially, and his job will be easier than what Byron Leftwich had to deal with last season. Then number 4, the Ravens. This could be an extremely attractive job if Lamar Jackson remains the centerpiece or a gig with shaky prospects without him. So this is one of those high ceiling, low floor type of situations like us, boom or bust. It could be one of the best offensive coordinator position openings, or it can be one of the worst, just like us, who's number 5 right after them. Because of that degree of uncertainty and how dependent the Ravens are on Jackson, we place them 4th, though this could theoretically rank higher. Ravens GM Eric DeCosta and coach Jim Harbaugh both said Thursday that Jackson will have input in the hiring of the new offensive coordinator and draft and free agency plans, which is a lot of responsibility, especially for a guy that's not signed long term. That's crazy. That man is about to be the LeBron of the Ravens. So they're at least operating as if he will remain in Baltimore. One concern, there are not a lot of top flight consistent weapons outside of Mark Andrews. Jackson does elevate everyone's game and makes the squad a consistent contender, but he needs more around him, and that's a good point. Lamar Jackson is great, but outside of Mark Andrews is a struggle. And now we're to the Commanders, which is 5th overall. But before we dive into what they had to say about the Commanders exactly, just want to read off the rest of them. You have the Patriots at 6th, so that's funny for Shea. We beat Shea there. Then you got the Panthers 7th, Titans at 8th, Cardinals at 9th, Broncos at 10th. Golly, Russell Wilson. Texans at 11, Jets at 12, and then the Colts at 13. Remember all the Colts fans laughing at us for taking Carson Wentz? Now look at them. Now let's go back to the Commanders. Mike Jones went on to say, if we're just going off personnel, then this is a pretty intriguing job. The offensive coordinator inherits 3 talented wideouts, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and Jahan Dotson, a solid tight end in Logan Thomas, which I kind of disagree about after that last season, but we'll see, and a promising running back in Brian Robinson Jr. But again, to my point, Thomas Brown, tight ends guru, gets the most out of his tight ends. You bring him in as an offensive coordinator, maybe he re-unlocks Logan Thomas, because we unlocked Logan Thomas, then he had a bad year after Juan Castillo took over the tight ends group over Pete Honer, who unlocked Logan Thomas. Maybe Thomas Brown can get that back out of him. I mean, Logan Thomas Brown. You see the synergy there? I'm just playing. But going back to Mike Jones and a promising running back in Brian Robinson Jr., do not forget Antonio Gibson. I'm tired of people leaving Antonio Gibson out as if he's not just crazy talented. Despite instability at quarterback, Washington still flirted with a playoff berth, but the uncertainty engulfing the franchise makes this job less attractive. There are questions about the next quarterback. Is it Sam Howell or an established veteran currently on the roster? And Mike Jones didn't say this, but maybe you even draft the guy. Who knows? He goes on to say Ron Rivera is entering year 4, but with the sale expected soon, there's no telling if the next offensive coordinator is signing up for a one-and-done job. A new owner could possibly clean house if a 2023 campaign proves unsatisfactory. So there you go. He starts to dive into why the Commanders could be the best opportunity for an defensive coordinator or the worst. Starting with the worst, let's go ahead and get that out the way. Again, like he said, the new owner may just come in and everybody's job can be on the line. I mean, literally everybody will be coaching for their job in 2023. Ron Rivera as head coach, Martin Mayhew as GM, everybody in the front office, all of the other little mini GMs we have. Even Jason Wright as team president is not safe. And of course, if all of that stuff at the top is not safe, who knows what's going to happen with position coaches, the running backs coach, tight ends coach, everybody, offensive lines coach. Literally nobody is safe. Roster-wise, nobody is safe. Who knows if they even feel like re-signing Deron Payne long-term? Who knows if they actually care to keep Cameron Curl and things like that? If they care to keep Curtis Samuel beyond next year? What if the new owner wants to bring in a guy that wants to just completely overhaul this roster just like Ron Rivera did, where they let go players that we thought were good and that we liked, but they just felt like it didn't fit what they wanted to do? What if they just feel like Terry McLaurin's a great wide receiver, but they would prefer to bring in their own guy? What if Sam Howell balls out this next season and for some odd reason the owner is like, still, I want to draft my own quarterback? You never know. So there's all kinds of crazy instability. I mean, granted, with a new owner, all of the other stuff will be in the past, but this is still the organization that has the most going on off the field than any other organization in the NFL. Even with Dan Snyder gone, that's still going to be fresh in the locker room, in the building, and the entire atmosphere of the DMV, in Richmond and all of that type of stuff. And they're probably going to get asked questions, a million questions every day. You never know. We might end up being the team on Hard Knocks. It's a lot of baggage that comes with this job, man. But the positives and why this could end up actually being the best offensive coordinators opening. Going back to all of the chaos that I just talked about, I've already talked about this in videos and live streams, but if you come in as an offensive coordinator and the new owner comes in and sees you firsthand how good of a job you're doing, if they don't like Rivera and end up firing him at the end of the 2023 season, you have a very good chance of being first in line for the new head coach opening. and a new owner with a potentially new GM that's willing to do everything that they can to allow their head coach to succeed. They're willing to put in all the money that's necessary, all of the resources, all of the time and stuff like that. With all of the talent that we already have on this team, we're about to get to that. That could be a great situation to be in as a potential head coach. If you want to become a head coach soon, usually if there's a head coach opening, the team was terrible and it may not have been the head coach's fault all the way. And again, usually it's because the roster is just bad. They couldn't win games, but the head coach usually takes the fault for that. They end up usually being the scapegoat. Whereas us, it's not like our team is terrible. If Ron Rivera gets fired, it's going to be mostly because a new owner just wants somebody else in the building. May not necessarily be because Ron Rivera is just incompetent, and it definitely won't be because this roster is terrible. Going into 2024, if Ron Rivera does end up getting fired, I'm pretty sure we would have one of the best rosters out of all teams with head coach vacancies. I'm pretty sure. If not number one, at the very least, I feel like top three potentially. So you could become the head coach for a new, potentially great owner with a lot of money, take care of the Commanders, or even if they change the name to something else, as if it's their new baby. And it's going to pour all the resources and capital in order to make everything succeed. So you're going to have the backing from the top, and then your roster should be really good because we have so much talent on this team, and us not making the playoffs is a huge underperformance from this overall team. I've been saying it. Quarterback was the main reason. You can blame offensive line a lot as well. You can blame offensive coordinator a lot as well. But you could take Scott Turner with this exact offensive line, and everything else is the same, but you change Taylor Heineke or Carson Wentz and put in any of the top 10 quarterbacks, we make the playoffs plain and simple, which is my point. So this roster is really good. You just got to figure out quarterback, and you never know. Sam Howell may already be that guy that you got for cheap. You're inheriting it from a previous head coach and a previous draft that you had nothing to deal with, and he was still only a 5th round pick anyway. So you can have a sleeping giant at the quarterback position in Sam Howell, somebody that just needs their potential awakened and to be given an honest chance. This team did not give Sam Howell the chance that he deserved last year. He should have started as soon as Carson Wentz got hurt against the Bears going into that Packers game. I'm pretty sure, I'm willing to bet money, if we could get a time machine to go back in time, you start Sam Howell instead of Taylor Heineke, we make the playoffs. I'm willing to bet money on that. And then going back to the talent of the roster, to get specific, as an offensive coordinator on the offensive side of the ball, if you do everything that you can and pour in all your resources, free agency and draft, to fix the O-line this offseason, you have one of the elite receiving cores in the NFL. I feel like with elite quarterback play, it wouldn't even be an argument. Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and Jahan Dotson would be top 3. At the very least, top 5 receiving cores in the NFL. I mean, people that are neutral analysts like Chris Sims, Mina Kimes, all of those type of people are super down on the team in general. But one thing they would always admit is that this receiving core is being underutilized, and they should be elite if they just had better quarterback play and a better offensive coordinator to get the most out of them. So the receiving core, in my opinion, is elite, and I feel like all it's going to take is a really good quarterback, or at least a good enough quarterback to show the rest of the world that they are truly elite. The running back group is very talented, and then as long as you do everything that you can to rebuild the offensive line this offseason, the offensive line should be really good. That's everything you need. And again, Sam Howell is a sleeping giant. I think he can end up being good enough to be a franchise quarterback. I'm still in the boat to where, like, if you want to take an Anthony Richardson to try it, do it. If Trey Lance is tradable for a very, very late round pick just to take a chance on him, do it. But at the same time, I do believe Sam Howell has some great talent to him, and he impressed me a lot in that Cowboys game. I'm not gonna lie, that one game did kind of change the narrative on him a little bit, made me look at him a little bit different. Not to the extent of CJ Stroud against my Georgia Bulldogs, how I felt about him before going into that game, and the difference in that to how I felt about him leaving that game. But there is a pretty big jump from how I felt about Sam Howell before that Cowboys game to how I feel about him now after that Cowboys game, for sure. And he could potentially be that guy. You may have your franchise quarterback already on roster on a rookie deal. You already have Terry McLaurin paid long-term, Jonathan Allen paid long-term. You got to figure out how to pay Deron Payne and a few other guys like Cameron Curl and stuff like that. But overall, this team is primed to be great. You have crazy cap space if you want to, if you make certain cuts, especially Carson Wentz, like the video already just did last night, where I break down how the Commanders could end up having $58 million worth of cap space this offseason. But either way, there's so much flexibility to do what you need to do to get success out of this team. There's so much talent already present, and most of the top talent on the team is here long-term for for at least the next 2-3 years anyway. This could potentially be a great situation. And again, back to my main point, even though this team is chaotic right now, if you go out there through all of this chaos as an offensive coordinator and show this new owner that you belong here and that you did a fantastic job isolated away from whatever Rivera, Martin Mayhew, and all of these other people have done, you could be first in line to become the next head coach of whatever our team name will be. I want to say the Commanders. I feel like at the very least, new owner, whoever you are, at least keep the jerseys and keep the colors, please. I don't really care about the name change that much, really, honestly. If it's not Red Wolves, at the end of the day, I really don't care as long as it's something not terrible. So you can keep it Commanders for all I care. But if you end up changing it, just don't change it to something terrible. Either way, man, the next offensive coordinator, hopefully Thomas Brown, sees this as an opportunity to be like, man, I could really start a dynasty here. I feel like the Commanders are a sleeping giant with all of the talent. And again, all of the capital that we have, draft-wise, free agency-wise, we can truly become something special. It just takes the right guy to bring it out of him. Also, before we go, speaking of Thomas Brown, again, just to remind y'all, Thomas Brown is officially interviewing for the offensive coordinator opening today. And remember, his first season with the Rams, Brown oversaw the ground game that averaged 126.1 yards per game. So even though he's the young, creative, bright, offensive-minded coach that could potentially get a lot out of the passing game as well, remember, he has a really strong run game background as well, as a running back, as a player. And his first year with the Rams, when he was the one mostly designing the run game, the Rams had their most dominant run game they've had since Todd Gurley. And then again, he moved the tight ends coach, and then he had a little bit of something to do with the passing game. So he's shown that he can do both pretty well, and I can't wait to see what he does with more responsibility and control on his plate. But one really interesting thing that I noticed with all of these offensive coordinator things going on, we had a lot of interviews lined up, and even after we interviewed Pat Shumur, we already knew, like, oh, okay, we'll be interviewing these other guys at this point, like next week or whatever. But with Thomas Brown, as of right now, we don't have any further scheduled interviews. I mean, we have guys that we've reportedly been interested in and that we've requested interviews for, but they either turned it down or we just haven't heard back from them or whatever. This is the last confirmed interview, and maybe they feel like, okay, we've interviewed these other 4 guys. Thomas Brown is the 5th. After this, we're probably done with our process. Maybe they continue their search to do due diligence, but maybe they already got their highest priority 5 out the way. Again, not including the guys that already denied it. I mean, like Darrell Bevell, they wanted to meet with him, and Jim Caldwell and guys like that already turned it down because they want head coaching opportunities, or Darrell Bevell just wanted to stay with the Dolphins for another year. Outside of guys like that have pretty much said, we're not interested at all, we're not even going to go through with an interview for the Commanders, everybody else has officially been interviewed. There's no further ones. So maybe after Thomas Brown, this 5th interview, they're done with their search for the most part. And who knows, maybe Thomas Brown being the last official interview that we know of that's been reported so far, maybe he's the most likely candidate because of that. I really hope so, because they already interviewed Pat Shumur. They interviewed Ken Zampese as the current QB's coach, who may just end up staying that if we bring in another guy from the outside, which is what I hope happens. Charles London from the Falcons, we already interviewed him. Already interviewed Eric Studesville from the Miami Dolphins. And now 5th, we have Thomas Brown, who looks like top billing a little bit. So I hope the fact that we don't have any official interviews set up beyond this, that's a good sign that Thomas Brown may be the guy, but who knows? I may just be reading too much into it. But either way, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. And as always, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose names you see scrolling on the screen right now. Definitely let me know your thoughts on the situation as far as the Commanders offensive coordinator opening position, as far as how we're compared to the rest of the NFL. Are we the best or are we the worst opening in the NFL? Let me know. And without further ado, I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.